Hi, this is TheHande, and these are my top 10 He-Man cameos on She-Ra. I was actually planning on ranking all of He-Man's appearances on She-Ra, but because there's a lot of He-Man cameos where he actually isn't part of the episode's plot, I decided that wouldn't be as interesting. Also, this list specifically focuses on episodes where He-Man appears, not just He-Man characters. And also, the top 10 episodes were even in consideration for my top 10 She-Ra episodes list, so think of this as an extended honorable mentions. And let's get on with it. Number 10, Into Etheria. This episode of course kicks off She-Ra the Princess of Power, and to some extent it really is just a He-Man episode just set in Etheria. Adam gets into trouble, transforms, and beats up a bunch of bad guys. I really only included this one because He-Man is unquestionably the main character of the episode, and a lot of the other appearances that didn't make the list weren't as extensive. But that is also the reason why I can't have it much higher than this, because this is one of only 2 episodes where Adora doesn't actually transform. And also the animation's a bit hit and miss here, even with plenty of horsemen for He-Man to fight.
Oh, in the name of the Great Rebellion! Sorry I scared you, pussycat.
Pussycat?
Number 9, He-Man and She-Ra Christmas Special. The Christmas Special is truly a memorable entry from both shows. It features so much action on both Eternia and Etheria that I simply had to mention it. However, to be perfectly fair, He-Man plays a fairly nominal role, and the real star of the special is Skeletor, especially towards the end as he grows more protective of the children. It's extremely fun, but not the best featuring He-Man, which is why it ended up at number 9. At number 8, The Day of the Flowers. In this episode, Adam and Adora lose their swords right as the Monstroids attack a party they're holding on Etheria. They spend the episode looking for the swords, while their friends fend off against the Monstroids. Yes, He-Man and She-Ra are really not the big stars of this episode, only appearing towards the end. But luckily there's plenty of action as their friends try to fend off against the Monstroids, so it's not a boring episode, but I really couldn't have it much higher because of this.
I believe Adora is getting desperate. She's attacking the Monstroids with ice donuts.
Number 7, Horde Prime Takes a Holiday. As the title implies, in this episode Hordak is put in charge of Horde Prime's main ship while he's on vacation. He decides to make a sneak attack on Eternia, but Skeletor sneaks on board the ship, takes over the ship, and forces She-Ra and He-Man to combine their forces to stop him, and even rescue Hordak in the middle of it. This is an episode with a lot of cool scenes and details. However, He-Man is maybe a little sidelined in the episode, which is understandable considering that there are so many characters at the heart of the plot. But it's definitely worth seeing it for no other reason than to see She-Ra protect her butt from re-entry. Number 6, The Price of Freedom. This is an episode where He-Man and She-Ra try to rescue some villagers who get trapped in some mines, along with He-Man. It's a super intense episode with pretty high stakes, as the miners and He-Man nearly suffocate in the mines. There's luckily also a lot of action at the front of this episode, and the miners trying to save He-Man who gets knocked out is also pretty cool. However, despite the good story, the episode maybe has slightly awkward direction and writing, but I think it is probably one of He-Man's most involved appearances. At number 5, The Eldritch Mist. Now, you'll remember this as the episode where Castaspella got horny and pulled Adam to Etheria. As it turns out, the timing was perfect, as Shadow Weaver has just used the Eldritch Book of Spells to put an impenetrable mist around the Whispering Woods to stop the rebels from getting out. He-Man and She-Ra face off against Hordak in this one, while Castaspella faces off against Shadow Weaver. This is another very fun, action-packed episode. The story, admittedly, is very straightforward, but I like the goofy highlights in this one. I do think it's a much better put-together episode than The Price of Freedom at any rate, which is the reason why it managed to power its way through to the top 5. At number 4, She-Ra Unchained. This is the 3rd episode of the Sword of She-Ra 5-parter, and as I've mentioned before, easily the best. Not only is He-Man a central character, him being in peril is the catalyst which finally makes Adora become She-Ra. This episode is probably one of my favorite endings of any She-Ra episode, and it really shows her off at her best. Again, the only reason this episode doesn't get higher is that He-Man spends most of the episode being detained. But this one is an absolute must-see.
By the way, you were just in time.
Well, what are sisters for, anyway?
At number 3, Lucky lends a hand. Hordak plants a time stopper in the rebels' camp, leaving only Lucky unaffected by it. Lighthope reveals She-Ra's and He-Man's secret identities to him, and then sends Lucky to Eternia to find He-Man, so he can free Adora from the Time Stopper. This episode is honestly one of my favorites and easily the best one where Luki appeared as an actual character. And I love how He-Man and She-Ra join forces to destroy the Time Stopper at the end. Unfortunately, in this episode, She-Ra is out of commission for most of it, but it is such a memorable episode I just had to have it in the top 3. At number 2, the Inspector. Adora has to rescue his rebel friends as well as recover her sword when the Horde manages to get hold of it. So the heroes manage to capture a Horde Inspector and Adam puts on a disguise to get into the Fright Zone. This is hands down one of my favorite episodes of the whole show, not just because Adam actually has to wear a disguise to enter the Fright Zone, but because of the way he dupes Hordak all the way through it.
Squeaky doors, not good, make a note of that.
And yeah, it weirds me out too that Hordak doesn't recognize it. The ending of this episode isn't anything too special unfortunately, but it does have a lot of action at least. People who watch my adventure game videos might know that I have a thing about disguises and stuff. But of course, you already knew what number 1 was going to be before you even clicked on this video. At number 1, it's Sweet Bee's home. So yes, Hordak shoots down Sweet Bee's ship, who is on a mission to find a new homeworld for her people. He-Man, She-Ra, Mermista, and Frosta head out to rescue her. She-Ra and Mermista manage to free Sweet Bee while Frosta gets the hots for He-Man. And eventually the heroes blast into the Fright Zone and get Sweet Bee's ship back so she can go warn her people. This is a great, funny, action-packed episode with pretty high stakes for Sweet Bee's people, and of course the fact of how aggressively Frosta goes after He-Man is just too hilarious.
Aren't the stars romantic, He-Man?
Sis.
And yes, Sweet Bee returned in the lackluster Assault on the Hive, so yeah, easily her best appearance as well. So all around a solid episode, and as you already knew, also my all-time favorite She-Ra episode. And that's all from me for now. Tell me, what are your favorite He-Man appearances on She-Ra? Until next time, I have the power, so can you.
We have the